Inside the Law is presented to educate listeners in Monmouth and Ocean counties about legal issues. The opinions expressed by the host, guests, and phone callers are strictly their own and do not necessarily reflect those of Town Square Media and are not intended to be a substitute for personal legal advice from your own attorney.
Your questions and comments are welcome at 732-505-1160. Inside the Law, talk radio for the Jersey Shore.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of Inside the Law, brought to you by the law offices of Novy & Associates. Our phone number here at the studio is 732-505-1160. Welcome to our listeners here on 1160 WOBM AM in Ocean County, 1310 AM in Monmouth County, and all over the world on www.wobmam.com. Every week, we literally take you, the listener, inside the law to learn about a topic of interest. Today's subject matter is very near and dear to my heart because it deals with aging in place, which is a big part of the services that the law firm of Novy & Associates is involved in. We're a boutique elder law firm that specializes in aging in place, protecting one's assets. We deal with and give advice on estate planning, asset protection, Medicaid planning, guardianships, estate settlement, administering estates, litigating estates, real estate, and much, much more. Aging in place is a very important part of our service area because, as you know, in Ocean and Monmouth County, we have a very substantial adult population. In Ocean County, roughly 25% or more of our population are seniors. They represent about 160,000 strong. We have over 85 adult senior communities, some gated, some not. We have a number of other kinds of continuing care communities in Ocean County. And statistically, I recently learned as a member of the State Governor's Commission on Alzheimer's Study that every day, literally 10,000 people in this country are turning age 65, and that number continues to grow. So with me today is a friend, colleague, and partner in Aging in Place, and please welcome Peter Labravico. Peter is the president and owner of Interim Healthcare Services and Interim Home Care, a company that provides companions, home health aides, nurses, and provides help for seniors who are able to and are desirous of aging in place in the comfort, dignity, and privacy of their own home. So we're going to learn a lot more today about how do we age in place, what is the role of a home health aide, and much, much more. So again, as always, I'd like to remind our listeners, please have a pen and pad handy because we give out a lot of important information, phone numbers, and ways that you can learn more about today's subject matter. And as always, our phone lines are open. If you have questions of Peter or myself, Bob Novy, feel free to call us at 732-505-1160. We've been doing this show for over 20 years, and you, our audience, are what make it possible and incent us to come on and do the show every 2 weeks. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, Bob. How are you?
Fine, and you?
Fine, thank you.
How did you become active in the home health care industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. Unfortunately, how I was introduced to home care was my father became ill. He battled cancer for 3 years, started out in his thyroid, spread into his lungs, eventually into his brain. It wasn't the way I wanted to learn about home care, but we kept him at home. We brought hospice in. He was surrounded by his family, and we had several different agencies come in the home in addition to the hospice services that we had. And it was eye-opening for me. It changed my life. At the time, I was going through transitions in my own career. And I said to myself, you know, there's a real need for this service. And I wanted to do something more rewarding, more community-based. So my wife and I decided to open our own home care agency a couple of years back. And we serve the community every day, and it's very rewarding.
You know, I have a similar parallel experience, Peter. As I've said many times before on the show, my mom and dad had a lot of physical and medical ailments, and my mom in particular suffered a stroke. And I very quickly realized, even though I'm an elder lawyer, when it happens to a loved one, a family member, we as children are not prepared to deal with the daily needs of our parents and loved ones. As you know, we are called the sandwich generation, sandwiched between raising our own children, worrying about their activities, their education, their needs, and sandwiched between them on one end, earning a living, as we both do, and then when we have to deal with aging and infirm family members, it's a balancing act that very few people can perform, in addition to the lack of training that most people don't have in terms of knowing what to do and emotionally being able to deal with it. So it does take a special person with special talents, doesn't it?
Absolutely. There's definitely a learning curve involved anytime there's a healthcare crisis in the family. One thing I would add to what you said about the sandwich generation is the demographic shifts in this country where families are spread out. You know, it used to be that you had multiple generations living in the same house or the same town or the same county. We get phone calls almost every day from adult children who live in Florida or California, and their mom lives here in Ocean County and is declining or has had a health event, and they don't know where to turn, and they need help. They can maybe fly in for a week to try and get everything set up, but they have their own family, their own career to return to, and they feel kind of helpless that they're so far away, and that's where we come in and kind of talk them off the ledge a little bit, if you will, and we put all the services and in place that they need.
What are some of the services along those very lines? What are some of the services that a home care agency such as Interim provides on a regular basis?
I guess you could divide it into three basic levels of service. The first would be what we call a companion service. That person can help with meal preparation. They can do some light housekeeping for your loved one, throw some laundry in. They could provide transportation if your loved one needs to go to doctor's appointments or go shopping at the supermarket or perhaps a social event. That's typically for the client who's still pretty functional. They can still shower themselves, bathe themselves, but they just need help with those kind of ancillary tasks that we need to perform every day.
And can that, just to start with that, Peter, can someone get that kind of a service like on an as-needed basis, a certain number of hours a day?
Yeah, we have clients that only need us 1 day a week.
Okay.
A lot of agencies in the area will have a minimum, hourly minimum. My agency typically has a 3-hour minimum, and the only reason for that is that it can be hard to staff something less than that. But it could be 1 day a week. It could be up to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Most of the time for a companion, they only need us maybe 2 to 3 days a week, usually like 12 till 3 p.m., something like that. And it's usually, again, the lunch, afternoon activities, light housekeeping, things like that.
So that's the first level. What would the next level be?
The next level would be if the client needs personal care, if they need help with bathing, dressing, personal hygiene, using the bathroom, ambulation, things like that, then we would send in a certified home health aide.
And, stopping right there, I remember when after my mom had the stroke and she needed help with showering and things like that, I, as her son, and knowing how modest my mom always has been, I couldn't assume or perform those duties. And my dad, her husband of 54 years, had his own health issues, so he couldn't physically, as much as he would have loved to, he couldn't have physically helped my mom with the bathing and getting her in and out of a bathtub where she had to lift her legs because she was a stroke patient. And he had his own health issues as well. So neither I nor my brother at the time could help my mom with those functions. My dad couldn't help her, let alone himself. So we needed those kinds of services. That's a very good part.
Absolutely.
And then there's a third level?
Yep. The third level would be the skilled care piece, and that's when your nurses come in, either RNs or LPNs. They can perform wound care, IV therapy, medication administration, which is something that home health aides can't do. They can draw blood. We have clients who are on blood thinners, and they have to get their coagulation tested once a week. Instead of driving to the doctor's office once a week, we can send a nurse in to do the blood draw. And then you also have your therapy at home. You have your physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to another edition of Inside the Law, brought to you by the elder law firm of Novy & Associates. with offices in both Ocean and Monmouth County. With me today is Peter Lebravico of Interim Home Care, and our phone lines are open. Our number here at the studio is 732-505-1160. Paul, good morning. I understand we have a caller on line one.
Yes, this is Tina from Whiting.
Tina, thank you for calling Inside the Law. How can we help you?
I would like to ask a question of your guest. My mother is actually in a facility, a nursing home for rehab. She was operated on the end of April, and she went from one facility to the next, and they continue to say she needs additional physical therapy. And now this week, my mother says to me, we have to get the family together because the facility that she's in wants to talk to us about whether she's going to go home or not. So my question to you is, who really decides? Do you do any type of evaluation or some kind of test? Because I basically said to my mother, at the end of the day, I think only you can decide whether you can go home for yourself. Is there any parameters that, do you look for things that says, okay, we need to have somebody in the house, all the time, or is it something that you only need somebody sometime? How do you gauge that?
Okay, so it sounds like, Tina, that the facility that she's in and she's been receiving this therapy post her operation is looking at a discharge plan, and they want to get you and the family members together. So if there's a discharge plan coming up, Peter, what role might you play in helping answer those questions?
Well, the most important thing is that I understand the situation fully. So what I would typically do in that situation, would be to come to the facility, meet the client and her family, and ask a lot of questions. I'll stop and speak with the social worker at the facility to find out what his or her opinion is and what the needs are. It's not just a question of what type of help your mom needs in terms of sending a home health aide in to help with her activities of daily living, but also, is the home a safe environment for your mom? Does she need any adaptive equipment? Do we need to make any minor home modifications to make it safe for her? But that's really the short answer, is for me to come in and meet the client or a potential client directly and ask a lot of questions, and then I can make a personal recommendation. Hopefully my recommendation jives with that of the social worker. I'd say it does 95% of the time. And then we could put a plan in place to get your mom home. Most people, no offense to the rehab facility, most people don't want to be in a place like that for 60 days, however long she's been there, and they yearn to come home, and that's where we can come in to try and help transition her.
So to further help Tina, if let's say her mom is willing to come home, and the social worker and the therapist and everyone that have been involved in a case say she's appropriate to come home, it sounds like, Peter, what you would do on a hands-on basis, if everything looks favorable, is you'd still want to go into the home to see, is the home ready to receive mom? So when mom comes home, is it still going to be a safe place for her to go? Because while she's been in a hospital and this setting, it's been very structured. So can she go home? And what are some of the safety issues that you would consider for her?
The first would be, is she ambulatory? If she's not, she's in a wheelchair. I'd like to see the home in person, like you mentioned, Bob. I'd like to go and see, is it a ranch? Is it a one-level home? Are there stairs? Are there stairs to get into the home? Just those 2 or 3 steps getting into the front door can cause an issue. Can
mom get up or lift her legs and get up those stairs?
Exactly. So if she's going to be in a wheelchair, you can want to probably install a temporary ramp. There are companies out there. You don't have to necessarily build a permanent structure. You can rent on a short-term basis a wheelchair ramp. If she is ambulatory, then does she use a cane? Does she use a walker? Our aide can certainly help her with ambulation to get into the home. Once inside the home, we take a look around for things like throw rugs. I know it sounds silly, but I cannot tell you how many hospitalizations I've seen due to throw rugs. Especially if the client shuffles their feet. They don't really lift their feet off the ground the way you or I would. Then any rugs that you insist on keeping in the home should be very low profile, have a rubber bottom. We look for things like lighting. I can't tell you how many homes I walk into and there's inadequate lighting in the home. The home should be well lit, every single room, especially the bedroom and bathroom if the client's going to be getting up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. We look for grab bars in the shower. Is there a working fire extinguisher under the kitchen sink? Smoke alarms? Are the batteries being replaced? It's just a short checklist of things we look for.
Even, I'm sure, including even a medical alert.
That's a great point. There are a lot of new products out in the market now. The traditional, personal emergency response system, the kind of, I've fallen and I can't get up type of product was the more traditional one. But there are now more concierge type products out there where you press a button and you get a call center. It's not just in an emergency. It could be, do you have a question on your medications or a question about when your next doctor appointment is?
So, Tina, if you
interesting, thank you very much. That's interesting.
So, if I may, Peter, if Tina or anyone listening to today's show would like to have a meeting with you and discuss mom's return home and learn more about your services, I assume the initial meeting would be a complimentary one?
Absolutely. We always provide free consultations, whether it be in the skilled nursing facility, in the client's home. We invite families to come into our office. This is a personal business, and we want to make sure that you have a comfort level with us.
And if Tina or anyone else listening wanted to speak with you further, how would they get a hold of you?
Our phone number is 732-451-3431. And our website is www.interimhealthcare, that's INTERIM healthcare.com/Point Pleasant.
And if anyone didn't get those, we'll be giving them out additionally today. But also, after today's show, if you'd like more information about Peter and Interim Healthcare, you can also call us at Novy & Associates at 657-0600. And our marketing director, Jake Mason, can make sure that if you missed any of that information, we can certainly provide it to you. Tina, are there any other questions you have for Peter?
That's it. Thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your question. And I sincerely hope that you and your family are able to work on a discharge plan and, God willing, get mom home and have her back home where I know she'll be happier, but in a safe environment. And that's where Interim can be a valuable resource.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And have a great weekend.
You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Folks, you're listening to Inside the Law, brought to you by Novy & Associates. Our phone lines are open. Our number here at the studio is 732-505-1160. So I guess we probably answered my next question, which is, who would be an appropriate candidate for home care? It might be someone like Tina's mom who had a surgical procedure, then was sent to a subacute facility for therapy. And as you and I know, when someone has been in a hospital bed and has not been as active while they've been through this health care maze in facilities, they sometimes lose some of their skills, some of their abilities to perform activities of daily living. They're a little stale, they're a little kind of out of whack, and they need help to be safe if they are able to come home. So I assume, I guess that's one example. So that somebody, if they can come home, you want to make sure that somebody's going to be there to receive them and that safety is not going to be compromised. Are there any other kind of situations where home care would be appropriate?
Yeah, I mean, certainly somebody who's recovering from a hospitalization or injury would probably only need home care on a short-term basis. Hopefully we go in there for a few weeks and the client gets better and we withdraw and we've done our job. The other types of candidates for home care could be someone who's suffering from a chronic illness. It could be COPD, CHF. Maybe they've had a limb amputated, or maybe they've been diagnosed with a disease, a progressive disease like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. We see a lot of that, unfortunately. It's getting more common as people live longer. But some people just are suffering from natural, functional, or cognitive decline that happens to all of us if we live long enough.
And you know what comes to mind, Peter, and ladies and gentlemen, in reflecting upon Tina's call about having this family meeting, in some cases the client themselves can make these decisions and make choices for themselves, assuming they're competent and they're able to assess all the information that's being presented to them. But if they're not able to make these choices and decisions for themselves, I can't emphasize, ladies and gentlemen, how important it is to have certain legal documents in place to assist the family and to assist and protect you and your rights, such as having a financial power of attorney, so that if you can transition and return back home and you are appropriate to receive these services in the comfort and dignity of your own home, but you're not able to pay your bills and sign the checks and pay for the care, does someone have the authority that you've given them in that event to be able to pay your bills, to be able to have access to your funds, to pay for the care, to pay for the household expenses, to pay for the association dues and the real estate taxes and so forth? If you need medical decisions made, but you're not able to make them for your care, is there a medical power of attorney where someone has the ability, because you've given them the ability, to have access to the medical records at the hospital, at the facility where you've been getting this care and rehab, so that someone can provide that information to Peter and interim and be able to speak to the social workers and the physical therapist to help with your discharge plan and return home. And, of course, you have an advance directive or a living will. So it's so important that we as citizens protect our rights and be proactive and not wait till there's a problem, a health issue, or a disaster or an injury, and then try and get these things in place. Do them now and be responsible and, frankly, avoid the courts and any intervention from allowing yourself to protect yourselves, but also to have people in place that you trust, that you are comfortable being able to help you age in place and transition, if you need to transition, to the appropriate setting. I can't emphasize how important that is. Is there a general length of time that these services that interim provides can last? How long do people generally receive this care?
Yeah, well, I guess it depends upon what the reason is that we've been brought in the first place. Like I mentioned, someone recovering from a hospitalization or injury may only need us for a few weeks or a few months.
Okay.
Sometimes they need 24-hour care in the beginning, and then we transition to an hourly schedule of only a few days a week. Some people need care the rest of their lives, and sometimes we start out. I've had cases where we've started out. We had a gentleman in Brick, New Jersey, who passed away recently, started out as a companion service, and he declined when we brought in a home health aide, and then eventually we had a live-in 24 hours a day, and then he declined some more, and we recommended a hospice agency to the family. They brought the hospice in. Our live-in stayed there to supplement the hospice care because the hospice people are not in there 24 hours a day.
That's correct. They're not.
And the family kept the gentleman at home. He was surrounded by his family. It reminded me of my own situation with my own father. And, my wife and I attended the services for this gentleman because we got to know the family so well. And they just thanked us up and down, for the job we did. And that made it all worth it.
You're reminding me of a few other things, Peter. And one is that we at Novy and Associates, and I know you as well at Interim, have a speakers bureau. And we are oftentimes invited to come into the community. Sometimes it's to go into assisted living and healthcare facilities and hospitals to speak to the social workers and discharge planners and nurses about different ways that we work together to help folks such as Tina's parents, Tina's mom, I should say, and other people listening to today's show to age in place. We talk about the skill set that we bring to the table and the sensitivity training that we at Novy and Associates regularly receive, that your staff receive, because I know and you know that not all home health agencies are alike or the same. But also, speaking of speakers bureaus, we are regularly invited at Novy and Associates, as are Peter, to go out into the community. So if anyone is active in a group or organization and they'd like to invite us to come and give a talk in your clubhouse or at any meeting that you regularly schedule, you can call us at 732-657-0600. Ask for Jake Mason, and he'll be glad to help set up a talk based on the subject matter that you're interested in. And we can also send you a brochure that lists some of the topics that we regularly speak on. Similarly, as we talk about aging in place, our next show of Inside the Law, which will be on July 4th, the country's birthday, we're going to be speaking about the issue of elder law and bill paying and powers of attorney and candidates to consider. So please don't forget to listen to that show because you'll learn a lot more about the legal end of aging in place. And lastly, we started a new series in a community newspaper called the Community Connector. And every month you will be receiving, if you get that newspaper, you'll see articles that Novy & Associates has with questions and answers on various issues of elder law that we regularly provide. And one last thing I want to mention, that we at Novy & Associates have a website which explains our services. Our website is www.novylaw.com. And within the last several months, we started an electronic newsletter that also explains various issues of elder law. And if you aren't receiving that electronic newsletter, but you'd like to receive one, you can call our office at 732-657-0600, and Jake Mason will be glad to put you on our mailing list and make sure you receive one, along with other articles that we regularly distribute to the public on aging in place, what do you own and where is it located, how do you protect your assets, the importance of a power of attorney, the different types of powers of attorney, what are the duties of the executor, and much, much more. Now, back to our show. You're listening to us here on 1160 WOBM AM in Ocean County, 1310 AM in Monmouth County. Peter, what are some of the differences between home health agencies, and how can a consumer listening to today's show, best assess and compare agencies, and why might they consider interim the right choice for themselves, their loved one, their parent?
Sure. Well, I can tell you that there are a lot of home care agencies in Ocean County, and it can be intimidating, as a consumer. Your family's in crisis of some sort, mom or dad needs care, and you open the phone book or you go online or you're in the social worker's office of the hospital or rehab and you see the brochures from all the different companies on the wall. Your head's spinning. You're trying to figure out, how do I decide among all these agencies? Well, I could tell you, like any other decision you make, the more armed you are with information, the smarter decision you will make. Some things that you definitely should look into. And what I encourage people to do, ask a lot of questions. Call around to some of the agencies in the area and ask them, first of all, are you licensed? Are you licensed by the New Jersey Board of Nursing? My agency is licensed. We have a clean record. You can check up on us with the State Division Consumer Affairs website, which I can provide later in the show.
Okay.
Are the aides you're sending in licensed? Unfortunately, there are some bad actors in this industry who send people into the home with no training, no licensure, and really your loved one's at risk. Ask for a copy of the aide's license. You can go online and do your own checking on that person.
If I wanted to look up agencies and see what their report card is, I could check online with the New Jersey Department of Consumer Affairs?
Absolutely. The website is www.state.nj.us/DCA, which stands for Division of Consumer Affairs. You can check up on an agency or an individual on that website, and I encourage you to do so.
That's important to know, because I had a case years ago with an agency. I won't mention their name, but they knew that we were not happy because there was some elder abuse and financial abuse that had taken place, and we were replacing that agency with another. And the day the agency was being switched out, I went to the client's home along with the administrator or manager of the agency, and the aide, who knew she was in trouble, literally had left my client alone for about an hour in the morning. And when I showed up at 8 in the morning, we found out that the aide had just left and literally had abandoned our client. And our client had advanced stages of Alzheimer's. She was a flight risk. She had wandered around the house. Fortunately, when we got there that morning, the client was still asleep in her bed. But that could have been a disaster. And that abandonment, as I call it, was very serious. We did report it to the Department of Nursing and to Consumer Affairs, and the Attorney General's office did investigate it, and the agency was sanctioned. The aide, I know, lost her license, but most importantly, thank God our client didn't suffer any serious injury as a result. So licensing is very important. What about how else do you determine or evaluate the people that you're considering for employment?
Yeah, well, the background screening is a vital part of the process, Bob. Ask any agency you're interviewing, if you will, what type of background screening they're doing on their employees. A criminal background check, I'd say at the bare minimum, is an absolute must. My agency drug tests our aides, and I think that's an important part of the process. You'd be surprised at how many agencies in Ocean County don't drug test. I was surprised myself when I found out. And also, if the aide is going to be driving your loved one around in the vehicle, do they have a clean driving record? I perform a DMV check to make sure that person has a clean driving record. So that's an important part of the process, is that background screening.
People will sometimes say to me, well, I'm going to hire a neighbor or a friend or somebody through what we call the underground, somebody who's not through an agency, somebody who may or may not have the licenses. They're supposedly qualified, but you could be literally bringing a crook or a thief or somebody who's untrained or certainly less trained than you or I to go in and provide care for a loved one. And as you know, if that untrained person drops, hurts by neglect or by intentional acts, hurts our loved one, they're at risk. And if they themselves, the aide, the caregiver, falls and gets injured, you, the homeowner, are liable. So that leads me to an obvious question. I assume your agency has insurance for your staff?
Absolutely. All of our aides are bonded and insured. We provide the workers' comp insurance if the aide's injured on the job. We also have liability insurance. I have a $7 million liability policy. And we have a fidelity bond in place. Knock on wood, in the couple years I've been in business, I haven't had any theft. It hasn't happened, and I think that's a function of the careful screening that we perform. But it does happen, and those are the risks you take if you bring someone in that's not insured. If your mom's jewelry goes missing, are you protected? If the aide falls and injures themselves, are you protected? And that's another good question to ask if you're interviewing an agency over the phone. What type of liability insurance do you have? I recommend $1 million single incident, $3 million aggregate per year at the bare minimum. Ask about fidelity bond if there's ever any theft. And are they providing workers' comp, unemployment insurance for the aides?
Exactly. And I can't say how important all these issues are. And even from a Medicaid point of view, if someone is at home and they're paying for caregivers, if those caregivers are not licensed and bonded, besides the liability risks and insurance risks, if money is being paid, quote, under the table, and the fees are not, the salary or whatever you call it is not being reported, number one, there's income tax issues there and liability for the person who's paying these people. But secondly, Medicaid, if a Medicaid application is made in the future, Medicaid would not permit those expenditures to be legitimately counted against a legitimate spend down before Medicaid starts paying the bill. So you may have somebody you're paying services, thousands of dollars for weeks or months or years of service, excuse me, and then if that person needs to transition to a nursing home, an assisted living, excuse me, or what have you, Medicaid may not approve all those payments because it wasn't properly reported and documented, and Medicaid won't allow it any more than Medicaid today won't allow mom to pay her daughter for the daughter to care for mom at home unless the daughter has the appropriate licenses and experience as a nurse, an RN, or an LPN, excuse me, because otherwise they're going to say these were not bona fide or legitimate gifts and impose a larger penalty. So if someone is in your employ, before they become in your go into your employ, you screen them, you make sure their credit is appropriate, there's no criminal history, they have the licensing, and drug tests are done. If someone calls you, let's say someone listening to today's show, either live on the radio or listens to it on WOBMAM.com, or maybe listens to the show a week or a month later on Novy and Associates website, which is www.novylaw.com. What kind of dialogue and rapport do you maintain with a family member who hires interim? How do you keep them informed, to keep them aware of what's going on, especially when, like you mentioned, Peter, years ago we all lived in the same house or at least in the same town, and now families are scattered all around the world?
Yeah, that's a great point. For one thing, we're a small mom and pop business. My wife and I, we own and operate the business. I grew up here at the Jersey Shore, have deep roots in the community, so we don't take on any client until, like I mentioned earlier, I go in the home, see the home environment, and then we meet the client and the family directly. You're not meeting an underling. You're not meeting a customer service rep. You're meeting the owners of the company. I give every client and their families my business card, has my cell phone number on it, and I tell clients, you're never bothering me if it's a Sunday, weekend, holiday. If you have a legitimate, pressing concern, call me anytime. I'm always accessible to my clients. I know you do the same thing for your client families, Bob. You're always accessible to them.
I do.
The customer service aspect is very important to us. I think customer service in this country in a lot of industries has eroded to some degree. In home care, it can be non-existent. So it's important that the families know that we're accessible. In terms of communicating, my wife and I are pretty tech savvy. A lot of clients like to communicate with us via email or text. We're very, very responsive. Some families ask us for updates. We have a gentleman out in California. We care for his mom, lives in Tom's River, and he requested that we give him a weekly update. So my wife speaks to the aides and sends him an email every Friday.
When we get involved in an aging in place, elder law, elder care case, similarly, Peter, my clients, their family members, the doctors, the agency in place, they all have not only our law office phone number, but they also have my personal cell phone number and oftentimes that of my paralegal who may be assisting with that case. We always ask our clients where in the future they have a power of attorney, whether it's a financial one or a medical one or both, and someone may have to utilize or act and use the powers that are contained in that power of attorney. We ask the client to provide us so we can share this information with the appropriate responsible party. And sometimes they don't have anyone, so it might be our firm. But we ask them to provide us with a list of the physicians, the phone numbers. If that case becomes an active one, we make sure that the physician, if not ahead of time, has copies of the medical power of attorney, and if there is one in place, a living will. From a financial point of view, we encourage our clients to complete a questionnaire I mentioned earlier. It's called What I Own and Where It's Located. We welcome having a copy in our office in the client's file. And anyone, again, listening to today's show can receive free of charge a copy of What I Own and Where by calling our office at 732-657-0600 and ask for Jake Mason. Also, I will encourage our clients and family members that when an agency such as Interim is in the home, a copy of the medical power of attorney, a copy of the living will, and other appropriate documents should be kept at home as well. As you know, Peter, keeping those documents in a safe deposit box in a vault is not of any help if you have an aide in the house with a client and they have to be sent out to the hospital and the EMTs are called. The hospital needs to know what the person's wishes are and who to get in touch with. And you need, of course, access to that as well as to if there's a change of status so you can call the family in California, wherever they might be. So you can't impress upon folks how important it is because this is a team effort, isn't it?
Absolutely. And you make an excellent point. When we go into the home, we always ask, is there an advance directive? And 95% of the time, the answer is yes. However, out of those families who say, yes, we have an advance directive, I'm going to estimate about 99% either don't know where it is or it's kept in a strong box at the bank or at their attorney's office. And I can tell you it does not do you any good there. If, God forbid, my aide has to call 911 and the EMTs show up, We tell the family, have a copy, put it on top of the refrigerator. That's a common place to keep it, and the EMTs will often go to the refrigerator to look for it if no one's able to respond. And it's important that they know your loved one's wishes if they're going to take them to the hospital.
And as funny as or silly as this might sound, when I ask clients who come in, potential new clients, because like you, we do offer a courtesy initial consultation so people can develop a comfort level with us to see if we're the right fit to satisfy their needs or those of a loved one as elder law and elder care advocates. When I ask them, among other things, do they have a living will, they'll say yes, and they pull out a last will and testament. And I'll say no. The last will and testament literally speaks for you when you die. The living will is something that can speak for you while you're alive for end-of-life issues. So sometimes you have to remind people of the difference, just like people, I'll ask them, do you have an executor that can settle your estate? And they pull out a power of attorney, and I'll explain no. The power of attorney allows someone to handle your finances and pay your bills while you're alive, but the power of attorney ends when you do pass away, and of course that's when the will becomes effective and is used. Are there any future changes that you see or kind of an outlook as our country continues to age and the demographics are what they are? What do you see in the future for the home care industry? I'm sure there are challenges that we're all facing as we age in place and more people are turning 65 at the rate of 10,000 a day.
Yeah, there's no doubt that the demographic changes that are coming in this country are undeniable. Like you mentioned, 10,000 people turning 65 every day. As I mentioned, families are more spread out now. I'd say the biggest risk we have in the home care industry is that demand for our services could potentially outpace supply of the qualified caregivers. I read a piece a couple weeks ago. It's estimated that we're going to need at least 2.5 million new home care workers between now and the year 2030, when 20% of the population is going to be over the age of 65. So getting 2.5 million new people trained and licensed is definitely going to be a challenge. I think the entire country really needs to focus on this issue as our population ages to ensure that our senior population is properly cared for.
And I can say this firsthand, ladies and gentlemen, this is not a commercial, but I speak from firsthand experience as an elder lawyer who's been practicing law in the state for 39 years. Aging in place in a least restrictive setting can be a lot more positive and favorable and desirable and enjoyable, if you will, if you have the ability to do so in your home, in your own home. It's also less expensive. From an experience, from a cost-effectiveness point of view, Medicaid is spending about $75 billion a year, most of which is for Medicaid cases in continuing care facilities, such as assisted livings and nursing homes. And if someone can stay at home safely, the quality of life is much better. The care is one-on-one rather than being one of maybe 20 or 30 people on a floor of a facility, all who have to shower, who have to get dressed, who have to wait for their medications to be distributed to them, who have to wait for their meals and their toileting and other activities of daily living versus being in the comfort and privacy of your own home. So it's a lot less expensive if you have the opportunity to stay at home, receiving concierge one-on-one service through a home care agency that is certified, such as Interim, versus having to relocate into an assisted living or nursing home. Now, granted, there are medical conditions that sometimes prevent us with that luxury and opportunity, as there are sometimes financial issues. But the more you know, and the more you know your rights, and the more you act proactively, you can sometimes prevent some of these accidents from occurring. Like you mentioned earlier, Peter, about the throw rug. What are some of the other issues that might be avoidable? Some of the reasons why people do transition or go to a hospital or a facility that people might proactively look to avoid if they're properly informed, like a properly structured home environment.
I'd say probably the most common one, Bob, is medication issues. Medication compliance is a real issue for a lot of seniors, and if I'm not mistaken, is the number one cause of rehospitalizations in the U.S. is people not being compliant with their medication regimen. That's really the intervention that I think families need to do, and I think that's the concept that you're looking at here is intervention to avoid the hospitalization.
Exactly, and in those regards, something as simple as the cost of medication, which is a challenging task. Medications are very expensive, but as an elder lawyer, sometimes we look at a person's finances and we say, you can get these prescriptions filled a lot less expensively. If your resources are limited, you might be eligible for Senior Gold and pharmaceutical assistance through the state, and we sometimes show them how to apply for those benefits, because I've seen cases firsthand where clients don't know that they have these options available, and knowing how expensive the prescriptions are, they'll literally skip taking the prescriptions every day to every other day, or they'll literally cut the drug in half thinking they'll make it last that much longer, but it's not effective at that point. So polypharmacy or taking too many medications that are contraindicated can cause confusion, can lead to dementia, although that kind of situation can be reversed if it's caught in a timely fashion.
Absolutely.
I guess another one is isolation. Mm-hmm. People feel isolated in their own home. There is no socialization. Depression from losing a loved one, from having recently had a health issue of their own, maybe having been in a hospital, and now they're home and they're facing their own mortality. So these are important issues. And of course, as you mentioned earlier, the safety of the home itself, the grab bars, so that people can avoid a fall by having something to grab onto in the bathroom or in the shower. The throw rugs you mentioned. Food. What about food preparation?
That's a great point. That's another thing I look for when I go into the home is I open the refrigerator. If the refrigerator's empty, that's a red flag.
Yes, it is.
If there's a lot of expired food in the refrigerator, that's another red flag.
So you look at labels.
Absolutely. And these are things that a home health aide can help with. They can help with the socialization from the aspect of getting the client out and about, whether it's just for a walk, just talk to the neighbors, or a ride in the vehicle to go to an event where they're going to interact with other people. The aide can help with the medication management. Aides cannot administer medications. That can only be done by a nurse. But we recommend to families is get a pill box, have a family member set it up. They have pill boxes, I think, that go out as far as 3 weeks now. Or you can get a medication dispenser placed in the home, and the aide can do a medication reminder and remind the client it's time to take your medication. And in terms of the food, that's one of the vital roles that the aide does is manage the food in the home, make sure that there's no expired food, can create a shopping list, and can either help buy the groceries along with the client or give the list to the adult child who can do the shopping on the weekend. These are all things that the aide can do to intervene early and prevent that hospitalization.
And we always like to ask our clients themselves, what do you like? What are your food preferences? And as long as it isn't something obvious that may not be best for them, like obviously excessive amounts of alcohol, or maybe they shouldn't have alcohol because they're on certain drugs that would not be good to take with alcohol, or they might be diabetic and they all they want is ice cream and cookies, although we all love them. And tomorrow's Father's Day, by the way, don't forget mine and Peter's. We're both dads. But putting that aside, having a balanced diet based upon whether or not there is any dietary restrictions due to salt intake, sugar intake, cholesterol issues, or what have you. But that comes from being skilled and trained and know what questions to ask. And once we get the information, being able to fill the needs and customize a diet that's appropriate for the client. I go into facilities, continuing care facilities all the time, and I go into clients' homes. And the two things, Peter, that a lot of people are passionate about, whether it's at home or in a continuing care facility, two things, because we're all humans. We like good activities, and, of course, we like good food. And the challenge might be if you're in a facility, some people might like pasta, some people may not. Some people might like spicy food. Some people like bland food. You can't please everybody, but when you're at home, a menu can be catered and designed to fit the needs that are appropriate based upon the wishes of that client. And it could be a real success story.
Absolutely. And actually, we've even had clients who are used to a certain lifestyle. We brought in a gourmet chef, a private chef, to
told me that.
Prepare the meals for them. They can do a week's worth of meals at a time. It could be just dinner. It could be all three meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and the aides there to reheat them. Our aides and most home health aides are skilled in basic culinary skills, but they're not gourmet chefs.
Sure.
And if you're used to a certain lifestyle, that's a solution that we brought in for a few families, actually.
Also, let's say, as Tina mentioned earlier, you go into the home and the parent is desirous of and able to go home, but certain things need to be implemented in the home to convert it and make it safe. Can you help in that regard to have the home updated to make it barrier-free and safer for the family?
Absolutely. It's not a service that we provide directly, but I have partnered with a couple companies here in Ocean County who do home modification. I have one in particular that I work with that's founded by two physical therapists.
That's important.
They take a holistic approach to home modification. And what you're looking for really is for the home to be ADA compliant. In other words, the American with Disabilities Act specifies at certain heights and widths of openings and where a sink should be placed at what height. And these are things that you really have to know what you're doing. The average contractor may not be versed in the ADA compliance. So it is an important thing to have the home modified properly, and we do have that Rolodex of people that can help with that.
And similarly, if someone is being discharged from a hospital or facility and medications need to be ordered and reordered, and or medical equipment, you have access to those resources as well?
Absolutely. We have an excellent medical equipment company that we partner with. They usually can get equipment delivered within 24 hours. In terms of the medications, one thing I wanted to bring up, Bob, and I don't know if you have a lot of your clients that use this, are the pharma packs.
Yes.
This is something that's come out, I'd say, in the last maybe 10 years or so, where every single day's medications are put in a separate packet, has the date, the client's name, and the time, AM or PM on it. You simply tear that packet off for that morning and take the pills. It's already separated for you. I think it's really an excellent way to go for people who are having trouble managing their medications.
So as we wrap up the show, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for listening. Remember that Novy & Associates regularly hosts the show Inside the Law every 2 weeks. Our next show will be on July 4th, and we'll be speaking about elder law in its basic form, bill paying asset protection, and that show will be highlighted or complemented by our next article, which will be in the Community Connector. So please listen to that show. For further information about interim health care, please feel free to call Peter or his wife, Tamara, at 732-451-3431, or view them on their website, which is interimhealthcare.com/Point Pleasant. Peter, I appreciate your appearing on the show today. I appreciate the opportunity to network and partner with you. And ladies and gentlemen, our country is in a vital stage of aging in place. May we all have the opportunity to age in place in the privacy and dignity of our own homes, or at least know that that opportunity is out there. So to learn more about things and ways and strategies you can take to be safe and to protect the lives of our loved ones, call Peter at Interim Healthcare. Peter, thank you so much for coming on our show and spending your weekend with us. Thanks so much for having me, Bob, and happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. Absolutely. And Paul, thank you for being our sound engineer. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back with another edition 2 weeks from now. God bless and be healthy, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.